Thanks.
Good evening,
Hi, Pete.
everyone, and welcome to the Rotman School of Management. For those of you who I have not met before, my name is Roger Martin, and I'm Dean of this fine establishment. And it is a great pleasure tonight. The event brings me lots of joy and pleasure, and I'm sure it will for all of you here as well. So the reason for getting us together is to hear about and launch Diaminds, which I think is a fantastic book. And it is the second book-length collaboration between Mihnea Moldoveanu, our guest of honor tonight, and myself. And I guess I want to step back and just say, in the business of kind of creating intellectual property, there is nothing, I think, more pleasurable than finding a thinking partner who you love and adore working with. And I got lucky, and 11 years ago met my number one thinking partner, Mihnea, and we've collaborated on these two books, lots of other stuff, the Integrative Thinking program at the school. And it gives me just great joy to collaborate with one of the very, very smartest and the single best read person I've met in my entire life. So this is a happy evening for me. And it's also a happy evening because sitting right back there in the third row is our absolutely beloved benefactor of the entire integrative thinking effort here at the Rotman School, Marcel Desautels, to who this book is dedicated, and other books have been dedicated, because without Marcel, this book, the whole program would not exist. So it is wonderful to have you in the audience, Marcel. Wonderful. So with no further ado, I will introduce Mihnea Moldoveanu, my friend, Professor of Strategic Management here, Director of the Desautels Centre for Integrative Thinking, and my thinking and writing buddy. Mihnea, come on up.
Thank you. Thank you. Think about this as a machine that has a certain amount of free energy. And if it's in a high energy state, like my keys are here, it wants to fall into a lower energy state. Right? So whenever you feel like you know something, whenever you feel like you're in a familiar mode of thinking, the brain has sort of settled down. And think about the mechanical mode, different mechanical modes, as corresponding to lower energy states. And think about the diamind, the I mode, as being able to flip. So you're flipping between thinking and thinking about thinking. Which is why the catchy phrase, thinking about thinking while thinking, is something that encapsulates the message of the book quite well. You're thinking, and at the same time you're thinking about thinking. Now this is not impossible to do. A lot of people play fugues, two-part, three-part pieces of music that have several voices going on at the same time, and they can attend to these voices. It takes time, it takes practice, but it's certainly doable, and it feels like you're experiencing these voices in parallel. What the Diaminds, I think, can do, and what I think is very helpful to them, for reasons that we go into some detail in the book, is that they can flip. They can flip between thinking and thinking about thinking. So they can figure out when to think and when to blink. When to think and when to ask. When to ask and when to blink. But this should seem familiar to you. After all, there is something that if it's deep enough, if the concept is deep enough, it should also explain a lot of our work on integrative thinking, and I think indeed it does. Think about Model 1, Model 2, and then think about Model 3 as being this higher energy metastable state, to which you get by flipping between Model 1 and Model 2. So what the integrative thinker does, and what I think the integrative thinker has to do in order to get to this integrative state, is really be able to see the world in terms of these two models. So he has to flip between these two energy states. So I go back to this quote on integrative thinking that you've probably heard from both Roger and myself several times. The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas. What does two opposing ideas mean? It means that you're thinking of a person, for instance, as an embodied soul, or you're thinking of them as a machine, as a collection of neurons connected with some muscles to some bones, You're thinking of an organization as an army, and you're thinking of the organization as a hierarchy, as a market. You're thinking of it as a family, or you're thinking of it as a tournament, right? I can come up with data that's consistent with both of those models. Being able to flip between the two models and being able to be convinced by either one of the models and being able to flip between the two states of being convinced, I think is a precondition for integrative thinking. I will illustrate for you. But before I do that, I have this empirical conjecture to offer. You have a lot of unstable people out there. Of these, I think you have quite a few bistable people. People who are able to flip, genuinely able to flip. And of these, you have a whole bunch of bistable people who are willing to flip, not just for the heck of it. They're willing and able to flip in order to get to a better model, in order to cut to a better solution, not in order to just show that they have the virtuosity to flip among different models. That is the empirical conjecture I offer you. So instability marshaled to bistability at the very least, marshaled to the end and the discipline of finding a better model as a precondition for integrative thinking. And this, I think, can lead to some empirical tests that we're about to start performing relatively shortly. This is now something that you can investigate using neuroimaging. This is something that you can say, yes, this person has a greater proclivity to engage in bistable thinking. They have a greater proclivity to see the world in at least two different ways. They have a greater proclivity to settle into at least two different conceptual schemata.